Just a note. And they're supposed to be very back. So been streaming live on YouTube, so any conversation maybe you guys to be aware. She should be good to go now. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Chair of the Northern Advisory Committee and I'd like to call a meeting to order. Maybe everyone will get and join us here in a few minutes. We have some, most of us have been in person, what, almost 2 years now? Yeah. So with that, we're kind of face to face. Some of us for the first time. I'd ask that we go in and the advisory committee members introduce themselves and if you tell where you live or like to
Missy Clark, I live in Mayor.
I live in Nags Head.
Wayne Dunbar, Pamlico County, Paradise Shore Seafood.
Keith Bruno, Oriental, North Carolina. I own Endurance Seafood.
Carl Hacker. Thomas Lehman, I live in Williamson, North Carolina.
I'm a Avenger, biologist with the division in the Manio office.
With you staff too.
Let's just confirm it. I'm Corinne Flora. I'm the FMP coordinator. Y'all see me on WebEx in the last couple of years, so in person.
And I'm Laura Kansky, and the Marine Fish Mission Liaison. And I run us to people as quickly as possible. And just so you're aware, Lee, who will help in a second, did your athletes for this committee. So you're when you think for the committee specifically.
Yeah, so I'm Lee Paramore. Like you said, I'm staff office, so if you contact me, your phone number to me or through our state email, either one of us, you can contact me. And I'm Northerner, been here for about 26 years, so.
We're gonna go the whole way around.
I'm Hope Wade, I'm the administrative director.
And I'm Debbie Manley, and I am the administrative assistant to Fisheries Management.
And they're my personal heroes. Just saying.
Mike,
I'm Mike Leffler, a biologist supervisor in our Manio field office.
I'm Dan Zaff, I'm a biologist supervisor in our Washington office.
And I'm Charles Godwin, biologist supervisor in the Elizabeth City office.
I'm Eddie Mann, I'm the sergeant for the Coastal District 1 region.
thank y'all very much. Okay, moving along. We need to vote on the approval of the agenda before the committee tonight, so I would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved, if you can hear me, Jim Rice.
Jim Rice?
Have a motion by Jim Rice. And I. Like sign. Okay. We held our more to me with all in favor of we will take
Wow. All right. Thank you. Chair.
Hope, we cannot hear worth a darn. It keeps breaking up really badly. Is there any other way to get
So,
the audio?
we have had.
I can't hear what you're saying.
And so we can switch the audio. It'll take about 5 minutes. So we'll go ahead and do that. You're having trouble hearing. With us in the next 5 minutes, we'll do stuff like and try to get on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The video is much better now.
Can you hear us?
Yes,
Can you hear us better?
I
Yes.
hear you fine.
Say something, Sarah, and see if we can hear you. Roger, could you
Roger,
hear?
Jim, whoever was speaking.
Yes, I can
Yes,
hear.
that's much better. Thank you. Yes.
We don't need that.
What in the world? We didn't do anything, but I'm glad you can hear us better.
Really?
Yeah, maybe just like running around helps.
Things were good and now they've gone back to blue.
Well, I lied.
Oh, I had it muted.
Kind of like when I take my car.
You've gone blurry and you're mumbling. It doesn't seem to be consistent feed.
Can you hear?
Now I can't hear Hope. Nope. And the video's breaking up.
I'll tell you what. We're gonna try.
Can y'all hear us better now?
Right then.
So far, so good, yeah.
Is the video good?
Video's not great. Everybody else's video and audio is good. The video's a little better now. It just kind of goes in and out.
Okay, so we've determined that we have bad internet service here. So if you have trouble for the rest of the time, if it's becoming so disruptive that it's not working, then we can turn off the video and just have the audio, and we can get that to be clearer. So will you let us know if it becomes if it doesn't stay pretty steady, just let us know.
Okay.
Thank you. I apologize. I think we're okay to move forward for the minute.
That's the way it works.
Okay. So back to Marine Fishery Commission update. So we have had, first of all, thank you everybody for coming this evening, and thank you for those who are online. We are trying to have these meetings be accessible to everyone more easily, specifically you as AC members and also for the public, just to listen in. And you'll notice we are in Minio. We are going to try to have meetings at the different locations along across the state, because we do want to try to allow people to come in and have these opportunities to speak to you. So we have had 2 business meetings since you last met in March, and those were the May business meeting and the August business meeting. And in addition to having 2 business meetings, we've also had the appointment of 4 new commissioners. So we have 3 who were sworn in at the August meeting. That was Doug Rader. He is a scientist who is filling the seat that was vacated by Pete Carnegie's resignation. Pete Carnegie resigned, I believe it was back in April, for personal reasons, and Doug Rader is completing his term, which is over, I think, next June. So he'll be completing Carnegie's term. So Doug Rader, and then we have Anna Shalom. She is a commercial fisherman out of Wrightsville Beach, and she is a commercial seat. She is in the same seat that Sam Romano held previously. And then finally, we have Donald Huggins, and he's sworn in as the at-large member in a seat that was previously held by Tom Hendrickson. And so those 3 were new at the August meeting. They were sworn in, I believe, they were sworn in at the meeting, but they were appointed, I think, about a week or a week and a half before the meeting. So they didn't have a whole lot of time to catch up before they were in the hot seat, as it were. We have 1 final member who is Sarah Gardner, and she will be the other at-large member, that seat was vacated by Martin Posey when he completed his term this summer. And she will be sworn in, I believe, before the Finfish Advisory Committee meeting, and she will then be taking part in that meeting. And so we have had orientations with them. We're excited to have new people at the table, and we'll see how that goes in November. The advisory committee appointment process opened, the solicitation period opened mid-September, and that is open until November 1st. So we are accepting applications for all of the advisory committees. For those of you whose terms are completed at the end of this year, we will be contacting you. I actually don't know who in the room is up for that, but we will be reviewing those and we'll be contacting you in the next couple of weeks to see if you continue to be interested to serve, and also to get the applications. You do have to submit another application or resubmit the one on file, basically. So you should be hearing from the MFC office in the next couple of weeks if your time's coming up. That the new appointments will be made by December 1st. That's our deadline for letting everyone know what the new appointments are, who's been appointed, and who's not been appointed. And so that will take place after the November commission meeting. Like I said, we've had two commission meetings since your last meeting in March, so I'm not going to cover all of the details from each meeting just because that would take a very long time. But I do want to cover some of the highlights. And if there's anything that you listen to during a meeting that you have questions about, we can certainly talk about that. So during the May meeting, the commission were presented with the stock assessment report for striped mullet. We have had the scoping period for striped mullet has been occurring. It ended recently. Corinne will talk about the specifics of that after me, but basically the scoping period has been open. We have been talking to the public about that. That stock assessment did show that the striped mullet fishery was overfished and overfishing was occurring. And so the next step after the scoping is we are going to be bringing the goal and objectives to the commission in November. For the so they also gave final approval on the Southern Flounder FMPE Amendment 3. And again, Corinne will go over the details of the implementation of those management actions, but that completed the Amendment 3 actions for Southern Flounder, and you may have questions about that. We're just sort of finishing out the season, the short season for that this fall. So we do have, luckily, Mike Leffler here, who is very good at answering flounder questions. For another topic, and that may be specifically interesting to this group, is that the commission has, and specifically Mike Blanton has requested that the commission look into blue catfish more actively. And it is something that the division is already exploring. We have been reviewing the literature. We've started to increase our sampling of the blue catfish, but they've specifically requested that we up our game effectively on blue catfish. And so they received a presentation from our blue catfish biologist, who is Janelle Johnson. She has since left the division, but we are continuing that work and specifically looking at sort of some of the action that's taken place in Virginia and because of their blue catfish issues. And finally, the commission selected their preferred management measures for the striped bass Fishery Management Plan Amendment 2. So as you're aware, because you also had this discussion, the gillnet issue in the CSMA has taken over a lot of the conversation around this amendment. However, the commission selected, other than the gillnet issue, they did select all of the division recommended management actions, which are not dealing with gillnets. But again, Corinne will cover that in her update. So moving into the August meeting, I'll just continue with striped bass. So after the commission selected their preferred management measures, those went to the secretary and to the legislative committees for review, and they came to the August meeting for final adoption. At the August meeting, as I said, we also had 3 new commission members, and it was largely, the discussion that happened with them and at the commission table they chose to, instead of adopting the plan, they chose to table discussion until the November meeting. And that was largely the new commissioners felt like they were not ready to make a decision without being more up to speed on that issue. So that is going to be coming back to the commission. It's still the preferred management options. It's still a lot of the gillnet discussion, but the new commissioners have had time to speak to the public. They've had time to speak to us. They've had time to speak to other commissioners, you know, and just getting prepared for the discussion that they're actually going to have at the table. And we can absolutely talk about that more if you'd like to, but that's basically where we are at the commission table. In addition to that, the commission requested that the division draft a letter to the South Atlantic Council addressing the dolphin issue. So this is in regards to continuing interest at the South Atlantic to further reduce dolphin harvest. And basically the commission requested that the division write a letter to the South Atlantic opposing that action. And the director did agree to do that. So we are in the process of writing that. That will go to the December South Atlantic meeting. We are also going to be updating a white paper that the division prepared in 2017 on false albacore. This was at the request of Commissioner Roller. Again, this was sort of in his adjacent role of South Atlantic member, and it was supported by Doug Rader, who is the new science member. And it's basically to look at false albacore and review the stock status as best we can and review possible management recommendations to move forward with. So that is something that the division is working on. There's not a set date for that. We are working that into our schedule, basically trying to get that hopefully to either the February or the May meeting to have further discussion on that. Another item they approved was the river herring fishery management plan. And this was an information update. And the reason that the division recommended this is because the Atlantic States Marine Fishery Commission is currently doing a stock assessment of the river herring population. So the division suggested that the commission not make any management changes until that assessment was completed, and then to review it at that point. Let's see, we talked about striped bass. So those are sort of the highlights of the two different meetings. We do have a November meeting that is coming up in a few weeks. It feels like tomorrow to me. But it's scheduled for November 16th through the 18th, and that is at the Islander Hotel in Emerald Isle. And so the commission is going to be talking about the striped mullet FMP. They will be reviewing the goal and objectives and reviewing the outcome of the scoping period that we just finished. And then they will also be getting a stock assessment presentation on the spotted sea trout stock assessment. So that stock assessment has been completed. The peer review has been completed successfully as well, and that is going to be coming to the commission. So they'll be getting that presentation. And then finally, again, we'll be discussing the striped bass FMP management options. And with that, that is all I have for the MFC, and we can, I do have basically not an MFC note, but a related note. The director asked me to talk about, so Director Rawls has worked very diligently since she became director to improve our outreach to the communities, to try to speak to fishermen, all public who are interested in fishing or anything related to fishing. And so she recently held a couple of outreach meetings with the For Hire crowd here in Manio and also in Hatteras, and had really good discussions with a lot of those participants. So she We had, especially in the Hatteras meeting, I know the striped bass issue was a big topic here in the Manio meeting, and that's to be expected. But the Hatteras meeting, there were a lot of good comments. Some of them are sort of out of the scope of the division's function, but a lot of them, we can certainly work with the public on those items, such as the artificial reefs in the area. Those are a big topic, especially for the for-hire crowd. And also the red snapper, which is something we discuss at South Atlantic. That's more in the realm of the division, less in the commission's realm. And also, we are working on developing an economic survey for the for-hire industry to try to get a better hold on some of that economic data. And so with that, those are all the updates I have, and I'd be happy to take questions, or we can let Corinne go through the next items.
Well, this is Jim Rice. I have a question. It's
Yes, sir.
regarding the false albacore. Are we coordinating, that's a highly migratory species. Are we coordinating that with any other states or with other commissions?
So that is an item that we had explored. So far, it has not been a topic of interest at the federal level, and certainly not internationally, as far as I know. However, I know that Commissioner Roller had wanted the division to specifically look at state water actions. But that, of course, will bleed into our interaction at the South Atlantic and Mid-Atlantic discussion. So I think right now our task is to basically update what is the most current information, and then and then to determine basically what are the next steps for that. And that may be coordination with other highly migratory species. We certainly have Steve Poland, the fishery management section chief. He is still, I think, he still sits on the highly migratory species group. So he is at the table with that discussion as well. So that's where we are. I think really we're just at the very beginning of that discussion, and that you're right, that input is absolutely essential to moving forward in that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Thomas Newman. I also wanted to ask a little bit about the false albacore level tuning, because we just discussed that with the microcobia AP at the South Atlantic 2 weeks ago, and really both sides had a lot of concern with putting it under management, because the recreational industry uses a lot of it fresh in the boat as cut bait. And also the landings are very flat. For the last 20 years, the commercial landings have only been 500,000 pound coastwide. And the recreational landings, other than about 3 years, is a pretty flat curve, around 2.5 million pounds. And both sides fear that if it starts to be managed, then there's going to be issues with having cut fin fish rules.
Right.
Also, regulatory discards on the commercial fishing side, because it's a highly variable catch. You might catch 100 pounds one day, you might catch 3,000 pounds one day.
Right.
So if the state were to set a trip limit, then you're looking at a lot of unnecessary regulatory discard for a fisheries that is an overfish.
Yeah.
It definitely didn't meet the criteria at the South Atlantic that I saw for the South Atlantic to manage that species.
Mm-hmm.
There was I think there was 8 criteria. They look under the I forgot, they're not under MAGSIM. I believe they're under the Fisheries Reform Act. There's 8 qualifications it has to meet. And in my opinion, it only met about 4 to 6 of those 8 points.
Right.
And the AP also agreed that the AP voted down. We wanted to keep looking at it and studying the fish, because we want to know what's out there, but they didn't want it at the time to put it under an FMP.
Right.
Just for fear of unknown.
Yeah, and I think one of the points that came up at the commission table that came from Dr. Rader, and I don't want to misquote him, but I thought it was an interesting point that it's less that there's a problem and more that there's the future potential for a problem, and do we want to consider at least watching it for that potential future issue. But I think again, I want to emphasize that the conversation that's happened so far, it's very nebulous at this point. And we did, like I said, we actually prepared a white paper back in 2017 to look at if there was something that we could do. And I think basically fizzled out. There's just not much that we could do, certainly in state waters alone, because it is highly migratory.
Right.
So, I think that, that's coming from that discussion. Commissioner Roller certainly has concerns, and I think, Commissioner Rader was interested in what we would come back with. So I think it's, an exercise right now.
Yes.
To review the information we even have.
That was a hesitancy at the South Atlantic, because if they were to begin collecting data on that species, they would have to enter it to an FMP.
Right.
So we had to set a, a TAC and a
Right.
ACL and ABC and all that.
Yes.
And that's where the fear was at, and we don't really know where to harvest that, because this species gets misclassified all the time.
Yeah.
I honestly was writing my data wrong in the Northeast logbook for years until NOAA finally sent out a panel about 5 or 6 years ago.
Mhm.
And it's actually not false albacore at the Northeast.
Mhm.
It's a little toonie. And that's where we have a lot of conflict in data, is what's been reported to the Northeast NOAA Fisheries Office and the Southeast Fisheries Office, because there's a lot of misreporting on that species on the commercial side.
Right. Well, so that is something that maybe, we'll keep following. Whenever, I don't know when that paper is going to come back to the commission.
Right.
And it won't have any kind of recommendation or management action. It will just be what do we know about this species?
Yeah, that's why I was curious how North Carolina was going
That's
to look
it.
at it. 'Cause like I said, if South Atlantic were to take it, they'd have to start setting
Right.
limits.
Yeah.
They have to set a quota.
Right.
And that's what everybody was scared of.
Yeah.
South Atlantic side of it. So North Carolina wouldn't be setting an overall.
We're not going to set anything right now.
Okay, so there's still just data collection.
It's
stage.
basically just, what do we know about this fishery? And is there anything that would even make sense for North Carolina to do on its own?
Right.
But that's it. And like I said, we are still in the white paper development. We're just collecting information. Yeah, but that's something that, when it does come back to the commission, certainly. I was telling Sarah, and I may have apologized a lot for it before, but I haven't had an admin for a while. So I've been, like I said, these are my heroes. Everybody in here are my heroes. But I had tried to start sending everyone emails to keep you up to date on what was coming to the commission meeting. So I do intend to continue to do that. And that can be part of that update, just to make sure that you're up to date on when that's going to come to the commission.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions, Laura? Any hands? Did you want to talk about the meeting schedule?
Yes. Yep. So you should have in front of you the 2023 meeting schedule. So I have done a color code like we usually do. I've also listed the dates on the bottom left corner. And so this is the meeting calendar that we set every year about this time for the commission. And we start to, we basically book all of our events for the commission meetings so that we can get ahead of that for the next year. And I have gone ahead and set your meetings as well. This is a standard format. They're pretty much the same time every year. I do want to point out that in the past, or at least in the recent past, typically we hold the AC meetings when the commission has sent something to you to make a decision. However, based on a lot of the feedback that I've heard since I took over this position, it seems like it would be helpful for you as advisory committees to get together outside of those sort of high stress moments to talk about if there are issues you want to talk about, to catch up on FMP or MFC items, just like this. So to talk about the schedule, things like that. So that is my intention, but that of course is up to this body. If you would like to continue like that. For the 2023, the next item that we anticipate coming to you for a decision will be in October of 2023, I apologize. So in 1 year, what year are we in? So it will be a year from now. That would be the next time that you need to meet to make a decision. At least that's what's currently on our calendar. So I would like to offer you the ability to meet in January and in, I believe, April. And I would also like to suggest that we could do in-person meetings, but we could also do WebEx meetings. That could be, you know, a quick update just to get together so that you have an opportunity to give us your input, get updated and things like that. So I'm interested to hear from the group if that is something that you would like to do. And also I will, if you basically agree with that, then I will set up everything and then send it to you. And we can move forward from there. And certainly anything I set up is open for change to a point. But that's sort of the discussion that I was hoping we could have tonight, because we're getting everything scheduled for next week. And also in January, we're going to have probably new appointees. So in January, I'm hoping that we can at least have a WebEx perhaps right after the holidays and get the new advisory committee members started at least with that.
Comments from committee members? Well, in 2007, when the Fisheries Reform Act essentially established the regional advisory committees and the standing committees, they were meeting regular, whether it was an action item or not. And we've kind of lost all that as far as the regional committees providing input or bringing forward concerns in their areas. And I really hate that it got away from that. Because there were some really good things brought forward over those earlier years until probably the mid-teens. But, you know, if to me, it's up to the committees, but I think a good opportunity is lost if you're only meeting when you've got to take an action on it. But that's just my thought. So any other committee members?
And I'm new to
Go ahead.
all of this, but I know for me, being in a room with people and being able to talk about ideas and what's going on, I don't know what's going on in Williamston or NY or in some of these different places. And, you know, to be able to sit and have these conversations, I think are positive.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we got to get people in the room. I mean, we've been sitting on a computer for 3 years now, and so much stuff has slipped under the table on all sides. And it's just, it's not right. We got to get back here. We got to get back meeting regularly. And there's a lot of important issues everything's coming to a head at one time now. It's time to get back here in person.
It provided a lot of education to the general public back then too. I mean, Fisheries Reform Act was new, the FMPs were new, people weren't able to grab the terms and, you know, but I think it was a good thing.
This is a good alternative. I mean, Director Rawls is reaching out to the public. This is a good public forum to come to that's not so high pressure like the MFC meetings.
Right.
You know, we're just focusing on a handful of issues and we can actually sit down and discuss them without a heated discussion. And I think it'll be an important public arena as well in the coming years for the public to come here and make public comment.
Comments from committee?
I agree.
You know, as far as public comment and the general population, I think this could be a good place for them to come and voice their concerns. Unfortunately, over the last few years, and I think this is a prevailing concept amongst a lot of our advisors that we have lost, is that the Marine Fisheries Commission does not listen to a damn thing we say. To come just, you know, kind of to discuss things amongst ourselves, it's kind of almost pointless if it doesn't matter to them what we say. You know, and granted, I think, you know, the presumption is there that they read the things that we say and then kind of throw it in the trash and just doesn't affect their final decision at all. In the past, we have had an excellent group of people in both the central and then what became the northern that worked really hard with a lot of discussion, a lot of hours, tons of hours, trying to come up with solutions to various different problems that would be kind of not only fair to the people, but fair to the fish or the species that we're discussing also. And I think a lot of that discussion, a lot of that time, a lot of that effort has just been cast aside when it comes to the MFC level. So it's unfortunate that that's a feeling, but I surely, back in the past, I was way more excited about these meetings than I am today. It's just kind of the way things have gone. Whether it's the current makeup of the commission or various other reasons, that's just, it's not just my feeling. Like I said, I think we've lost some very good people to that same idea that, you know, they don't care anyway. Why should I waste any more of my time? And of course, you know, we can't, like a lot of fisheries law, you can't regulate decency. We can't make them listen to us. But I wish it was different, I guess. So for a public output or, you know, public to learn, this might be a great forum and get us together 3 or 4 times a year and it's all good. But as far as an actual advisory committee to the MFC, I think it's become just a big waste of time.
So I think that I agree that's a lot of people's feeling. And that's what I've heard from the public. And what I know from being a DMF employee is, yes, one of your roles is to advise the commission. But in advising the commission, you also advise all of the DMF staff who come to listen to these and who are online. And so I think that one struggle that we've had and one thing that has really triggered Director Rawls to move forward with outreach is that we recognize that we need your feedback and we beg people to serve on these, and it does get very frustrating. But we cannot manage these fisheries the way that the FRA instructs us to without your input. So it is my goal, and it is the director's goal, to work to get your feedback, to make you feel like you have a voice in the system. And I think that's going to be really challenging. I think we are both dedicated to that. And that is why we are all here today, to be in Dare County so that Dare County fishermen have a place to go. And I hope that you'll stick with us.
I intend to.
And-
I'm not. This
Even
is not
though
a
it's
grand
not-
resignation speech.
But I don't disagree that it is an uphill battle, but I think it's one worth fighting. So I think
And
that's
look at where we are tonight. This is an open public meeting.
absolutely.
We've got nobody.
Yeah.
You know, we have this recent commission has alienated the public to the point that everybody throws up their hands and says a lot of derogatory comments and very spicy language and just goes about what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think the division by way of the commission is in a very bad position with the general public at this time.
Yeah.
What we can do to fix that, I don't know,
But we can talk about it here.
we can. Yeah.
And I will say this, I think the first year that I went through the advisory committee solicitation period, we got 12 applications. Last year, I believe we got 36. And we have tried to open channels as much as possible, and I am hopeful that we will get more this year. And so we are, like I said, it's uphill. We are trying to build interest. We are trying to build that foundation of the public, like you, who come to these meetings and who participate in this process. So it will be uphill. I don't know that we will ever get anybody to sit through this meeting when there's not something juicy on the menu. But hopefully, when you sit at this table in October to make spotted sea trout decisions. Mullet decisions, you feel informed and ready to provide comment. And that comment does not fall on deaf ears. It falls on our ears and it falls on the public who are listening. And I will argue that it will fall on these commissioners' ears as well. So that's my pitch, basically.
So Everett has something to share. If folks want to speak to, just raise your hand with the hand thing, but we see your message.
And Everett had his hand up, but I think he took it down.
Everett, did you have a comment? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sarah is so right. It's that chance to get together and talk.
Everett, you got to adjust your camera, man.
Oh, I can say.
Not that the top half of you is all that much to look at either, but
I got like 19 cameras in this office, so it's a little crazy some days. But yes, there's plenty of things to talk about. But no, it's, the things that we can bring are the frustrations that we hear on a daily basis. About a year ago, I quit telling people I was on this advisory board because the second I did, I just got destroyed by everything. And the question 90% of the time was, I cannot believe you would vote that way. And I have them going, 90% of the time we didn't. But I think regular meetings would be pretty good. It'd be nice to get back and be able to discuss this and really get the opinions of the scientists and the commercial fishermen and the recreational fishermen, at least back within our group. And maybe people will show up again, because at least at this group, I think people feel like they get an input when they do attend. It used to be great having the guys show up in Washington and having 15 or 20 people show up for public comments, because I think they actually thought we listened to them. Too bad they don't think that the big board doesn't listen to them now. But that's it.
Thank you.
One thing I did see, speaking of the public eye, I fished the surf fishing tournament last weekend, and the Colonel and Director Rawls were both out there, and they went up and down the beach and they spoke with people all over. And if nothing else, that's, they're out there where they can ask questions. I don't know how it was before Kathy got in there, but they were out there being present. I don't think all the conversations were pleasant, but people, when we were at the dinner meetings after that, there were several conversations about the fact that they were even out there. That were all positive, that regardless of what the conversations went, that they were there and they were approachable. And I think it made it look like they're not this big person up here, but they were down there with them.
Other than us getting an email, how does the public know about these meetings?
So we do news releases through our news release listserv. We have also started to bombard DEQ's Facebook page as much as they will let us. So we don't currently have a DMF Facebook page. We have to demonstrate a need before we can do that. So we have put together an annual schedule of Facebook posts and other social media posts. So a lot of people interact on the social media pages, and that's how we are trying to, get people where they already are, just to let them know what's happening. And then also letting people know at outreach events, I went and spoke to a Rotary Club. Kat has been, or Director Rawls, pardon me. Director Rawls has been out to a lot of different events, just going out, talking to people, trying to make sure that people are aware that the meetings are taking place. So I think we have had some success with that. But we are, we continue to try to figure out how can we reach people. And I believe one way that we are trying to reach people more is to email license holders. That sounds like a simple solution. It actually, when you have 500,000 license holders, then that's not an accurate number, by the way. It's just an exaggeration. But when you have that many, it actually gets pretty challenging to email all of them. So we are currently working on that. And like I said, Director Rawls has made this a push since she took the director's seat to get out and talk to people. That is absolutely her message to staff. Have to talk to people. So if anybody has any suggestions about how to let people know about them in a more efficient way, let us know. We're basically racking our brains how to get that information out to the public.
Is there still a monthly newsletter, Tar Heel Coast, any kind of publication that goes out?
There's I don't think so. I don't think we have anything like that. And we do send it out to, there's a couple of online news sites that we send to. I can't remember the names of them right now.
Thomas, you had a.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I know, I've been working with the division a lot the last couple of years, and I know the division would love for the MFC to start listening to their advisory panels, because I don't know how many times Charleston's gave that striped bass, that striped bass presentation is getting ready to have to give it again. And if the MFC had listened to some of our recommendations earlier on, they wouldn't have had to done that so many times. And I recommend going and visiting the division in Moorhead if you hadn't done it, whoever's new here, because as soon as COVID opened up, I went down there and Steve Poland showed me around, and it's, I'm planning on going back again soon, to check them out again. And the staff wants to work with you, they want to talk to you, and that is our job, is to read these FMPs up and down and back and forth and know them to advise the MFC commission. And I think we should get these advisory panels together with the MFC sometime and have a little get together or something, because nobody knows anybody anymore. Nobody, it's all their interaction is contentious. It's at these meetings when you got a hot topic coming up. And that's why this meeting right here is good, because there's nothing, that's why there's no public here, because there's nothing on the agenda. But we've got to start building these relationships and learn how to work together instead of just everybody being so polar opposite and just voting down party lines, essentially. Because we used to, the MFC used to work together. I mean, the MFC has worked together for years and years and years. It's just here recently that everything has got so contentious and hot-blooded, and I think it's just the American way of life here recently. But I think we can work around it, because I mean, North Carolina, especially East North Carolina, where most of our fisheries take place. I mean, we can work together. We can cook a pig and figure things out, but we definitely got to get people back together. And I really think we need to get these advisory panels together, the Northern, Southern, and the Pinfish, and the MFC, because, like I say, right now, those guys, they get an earful. That's all they ever get on the commission. It would be nice to have something like Director Rawls just getting out there and meet the public. Even if the MFC does something like that, just get out there and meet the public and get to know your commissioners. Because I honestly, I don't know many of those guys. That's just a suggestion.
Anything else? Anything else on the meeting?
That's it. So what I'm going to do in the next couple of months is put together a plan for meetings. If you absolutely hate WebEx and don't want to have a full WebEx meeting, please email me. You can do that privately or to the group. But I think in terms of if we don't have an issue specifically, it is nice to do a WebEx meeting and then an in-person and then a WebEx. So that's probably how I will schedule it. So January would be a full WebEx, April will be in person again, and then the summer meeting will be on WebEx. And then October will be in person, and there will be an issue on the table that time. But please, once I will release that to the ACs. Once you get it, take a look at it and let me know if there's anything that you have concerns with.
Just a thought. Because there are some new advisors, and I'm sure on all the standing committees there are. Not to get in a long, boring presentation, but I really wonder as far as kind of just a simple presentation on what's the stock assessment and what the terms mean.
Yep, we actually
I
have
mean,
that.
you know,
We're reading our minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
you throw somebody a full FNP and they got the stock assessment in there and they sit down and start reading and going.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
we actually.
You're per recruit.
We actually have one of our stock assessment scientists lined up to give you a presentation just on stock assessments at the January meeting. So that's, we had thought about doing it this meeting. We sort of decided to save it for the newbies when they come in January. So that is one of the items that'll be on that. And if there's any topic that you as a committee want to hear about, let me know, let your staff lead know, and we can work on, getting that for you, either if it's a presentation or just making sure that we're prepared for a specific discussion. Let us know.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, Corinne, I believe it's your turn.
Okay. So as Laura said, I'm gonna walk down some fisheries management plan, where we are and what's open and how things are going. I'll start with flounder since that's everybody's favorite fish. And so we, as Laura said, the MFC adopted Amendment 3. And so the division has implemented the management from Amendment 3. And the 2022 season was based on that management. The recreational season was open with a 1 fish bag limit for the month of September. We will not have full estimates on recreational season until the MRIP wave is released, and that's likely towards the end of November. So that is something that we will be updating everyone on in 2023. The commercial season began on September 15th. There were many staff involved in this entire process, and it has taken a village. Our fisheries management, our license and statistics, our protected species branch, the Marine Patrol, everybody has taken on a part of this heavy lift, and we should be learning soon on how this whole 2022 season went. The commercial season is wrapping up soon, and so definitely we had heard from some people that they wanted updates at the AC meetings, but there's just nothing to update right now because things are still getting put in. Numbers are still crunching, numbers are still coming in. So we look forward to having all that data in and looking at that fishery in whole when all of the data is available to look at once. So I just wanted to give an update on that. Is there any questions on flounder before I move forward? And I promised Mike and Ann that they do not have to think about flounder FMPs for at least 1 year. So trying to keep that promise to them. So now
I guess I've got a question or comment.
Okay.
About this disastrous flounder debacle. At what point did somebody decide that rod and reel was acceptable commercial gear for flounder? Where did that come from? Who decided? We have gone on ad nauseum in this committee with other species that rod and reel is not a commercial viable equipment for capturing. We went with trout, we went with striped bass, we've gone through all this. And then this insult season at the end of the reel flounder, 7 or 8 days, said, well, you know what? You rod and reel guys can go and catch these fish. Whose brainchild was this?
So, Lee, I might hand this one to you if you know this answer better than I do, but I do know that currently the striped bass and red drum. No, not red drum. That one's not.
Red drum, you can have the one.
You could have
one
the
fish, the
fish.
recreational bag limit. The commission, has been looking for opportunities to use hook and line as a commercial gear for different species. And it always has been a legal gear for flounder, just not many people do it. So when we opened up flounder for gigs, staff and the director, basically when they looked at it, they felt that there was no reason not to include hook and line along gigs, knowing that most people were probably going to gig flounder. But you're right, it's not probably a common gear that people use.
Well, now, I've had guys for years wanting to use hook and line for speckled trout, and they're limited to 4 fish. They're limited to recreational bag limits for that speckled trout. Now, all of a sudden, they could have 50 flounder. This is insanity.
It varies how the rules are written. Like I said, you can have one recreational commercial limit, a red drum, because it's limited to the recreational bag limit. I think spotted sea trout's the same way, but flounder is, on the other hand, has always been whatever the commercial limit is what the flounder limit has always been. So for that one, the way the rule's written, we are allowed to let people keep a commercial limit of flounder.
And that is something we can address individually in fisheries management plans. So as management plans are opened up and we are working on management changes and things like that, those are things that we could address along the way.
Did anybody think about the fact that they're probably not going to get the numbers, the real numbers? Now you've just given pretty much a sport fisherman a green light to go ahead and catch as many flounders as he can catch for a day. I've had one guy come to my dock. I buy fish. He came to my dock and said, I've got 40 fish, 40 flounders. I'd only like to sell 20 of them because the rest of them I'm giving to my neighbors and my friends. And I told him I was not going to buy rod and reel fish, and he could give them all to his neighbors and his friends. And I can't believe that if my little tiny nothing dock in Oriental, North Carolina experienced that, other guys experience the same thing time and again. So these guys are they're using a commercial license, and a lot of sport guys have them to sell their tuna or to, they have them, they hold them. They think it's maybe even an investment. And now all of a sudden you've given them the golden goose to catch 50 flounder.
I think that's valuable information. The commercial or recreational season's closed, and a recreational guy with a scuffle could keep a commercial limit with no intention to sell them. So that's definitely a possibility. I mean, by the same token, a pound netter could keep fish or whatever and not sell them as well. But I completely get your point, 100%.
The pound netter didn't go through all that work to fill his neighbor's freezer, I guarantee.
I understand completely. Thomas, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I agree with Keith. It kind of caught me off guard when I saw that it was the hook and line and gigging fisheries, because I know a guy from New York, because New York hooks and lines flounder commercially. It's the summer flounder, not the southern flounder. But anyway, he wanted to move to North Carolina and do it. But I'm pretty positive they told him he couldn't do it about 8 or 10 years ago, whoever the director, however they interpreted that law. But I think we need to make a motion to fix this, because it opens, like I said, it opens up the recreational bag limit to 50 fish when that would open, if they were holding a commercial license. I would say we should make a motion to have the MFC look at, put the stop to that, because that's not a gear that any commercial fisherman I know uses to harvest flounder.
They just adopted the whole plan. Is that?
I didn't see that anywhere.
They adopted, or was this just, by proclamation and not part of a plan?
I thought North Carolina in general didn't use hook and line, was not considered a commercial gear in all fisheries in North Carolina. red drum, striped bass, spotted sea trout.
Well, red drum, it's a bycatch fishery, and how can you have bycatch with a hook and line? Hook and line only catches what they target, doesn't it?
That's what I'm saying. It's just, I like to know a little bit more about it myself, why it was, where in the statutes it was allowed.
So the question was never answered. Who made that decision?
Well, I mean, ultimately, our director makes the decision as what goes in the proclamation. That's the authority of the director. So staff discussed it and the director decided to allow hook and line. But I think the feedback you're giving would be valuable feedback. We'll certainly take back to our director over your concerns and the opportunity that people would have to sort of run, I guess, if you want to call it that, the recreational limits to keep a commercial limit, because they were able to do that during the commercial season if they had a crop pool.
And this has all been discussed, like I said, in this committee before. And for those reasons, it's always been shot down, is the idea of, you know, rod and reel or hook and line as commercial gear. Because it does blur the line terribly. And so many of the numbers that we are determined to get, and that the fish houses supply, would be lost on this whole hybrid fishery that, you know, that they're giving to their neighbors. I read it 5 times. I couldn't believe what I was reading.
I have a comment, Sarah. I have a comment. I don't know how to raise my hand on this machine. You know, I think hook and line is attractive because it's pretty clean gear. But unless you have a way to know that those fish are going to end up on a trip ticket, then you totally lose your handle on your harvest data under a commercial, you know, under the commercial fishery. And so until you figure out a way around that, it doesn't seem like a realistic way to go.
Yeah, you're looking at a conundrum, kind of like what they did in the Gulf with red snapper. Commercial boats used to take out their parties under a commercial permit so they could allow catch more than one red snapper, and their season wasn't just 2 days. That's something you're opening up to the charter for hire industry. All they got to do is slap on a commercial sticker and advertise they can keep 50 flounder versus 4 or 6, or how many people are allowed on the boat. And our quotas are tight enough as it is.
So that states right in the regulation, you're not supposed to do that. And if you take somebody, if you're taking a party out for hire, then they have to go by the recreational limits. If somebody's not doing that, then they're breaking the law.
The commercial industry, I lived under a microscope for those 8 big days of my flounder season. I mean, it's like the man left the dock with me and came home with me, and I said a lot of things, but he might as well have crawled into bed next to me because they were so damn close. Everything I did, every fish I caught, there was somebody watching me. And now you got, you know, 8,000-10,000 guys up and down the coast with rods and reels, nobody's watching them. You know, you couldn't possibly watch those guys. So again, you know, they're I don't know how to say it, but right up my butt, watching everything I do, and now you've got all these sport guys with commercial licenses catching commercial fish and not, you know, not reporting. So I've been put under incredible limits to try and rebuild this flounder thing, and they're working at odds against what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I feel like, is the rod and reel underneath the flounder ITP? Because if they're out there catching, they don't have to have the F-twing gill net permit. They're not having observers calling them.
No, like the pound nets are under that. It's just the gill nets.
It's just the gill net.
It's actually just the set gill nets that are under the ITP.
Yeah, I just was thinking about that as well. The rod and reel fishermen wouldn't be under any sort of intercept from the DMF to observe or look at that fisheries.
I mean, we could observe.
Do we have any data from the rod and reel commercial flounder fisheries?
Only what's reported through trip tickets.
Is there any reported, like what's the,
Do you know, Mike, how many landings would come hook and lines?
No, we won't get the individual gear data until we get the trip ticket data.
I'm talking about in past years.
Historically,
Oh, yeah, it's pretty minor. I will tell you that there were quite a few commercial guys that did contact us and ask us if hook and line would be illegal gear because they wanted to participate in that fishery using hook and line. Several pound netters that don't pound net anymore wanted another option to get out and harvest some southern flounder. What you stated is all correct, and southern flounder is just one of those fish it's always been illegal gear commercially, and it's kind of flown under the radar because there hasn't been much interest until the reality of a 72% reduction, kind of hit home. And everything that y'all stated about the requirement for these to be recorded, it's a trip ticket, and all that, it's 100% correct. It's not required, but none of the commercial gears are required to report all of their landings. That's only what's sold. And we have concerns on the gig fishery side too, because there's a large number of recreational sector that have got commercial license to gig. So it's not just the hook and line industry that's taking advantage of that loophole. But these are all conversations we've had with the director and all through the division on what to allow. And as Lee had stated, there's an opportunity to allow harvest for some of the industry that's asked specifically for it in this instance. And, it's just because of the legality of the mechanism for southern flounder, it's a different conversation than with spotted sea trout or red drum, because it is one of those that's allowed. And the director was adamant that, let's do it.
So in the past, has it been allowed as many as you can catch?
Southern flounder. And there's a few guys that take advantage of it. I know a number of guys that fish out of Rose Bay that take advantage of it every year, for that purpose. They go fill their freezers or whatever. It's a difficult thing to capture for sure, and that we've had a lot of conversation at the MFC level about the requirement for all land needs to go through a trip ticket, and until that happens, we're going to miss some of those landings.
Yeah. And if I may, just, that is a conversation that happens. I know it's happened for years regarding personal consumption. So anyone who goes out with a commercial gear, whatever that might be, and puts that fish in their freezer, we don't get that information. And that's certainly an issue that I think has come up a number of times. It sort of pops its head up when we have these big reductions, and are we accounting for everything? No, we know.
Well, I think we could never account for everything.
Absolutely.
But the opportunity for this particular issue is great. I mean, even the giggers, the Marine Patrol guys, when somebody's gigging, so you can easily, it's getting light. They're coming home. They got lights all over the boat. He's been gigging. You go and, hey man, what do you got? What are you doing? Let me see your either commercial license or your. So it's not forcing him to sell them, but he's been gigging. Now there's thousands of rod and reel guys. You have no clue.
Yeah.
I'll also add that if there is an instance where you have somebody that comes and is like, I'd like to sell you 10 of these, I have 50 of them. There is a line in your trip ticket to report that. So you would report your 10 fish that you bought off of them, and then there is a line that the fisher kept X amount for the personal consumption. So that we wish more people took advantage of that line of our trip tickets, and it is there for things. So
Yeah, but he ain't got to tell you he got 20 more to go.
Right.
they don't have to. They don't. But I'm just, if it's happening, encourage people.
Yeah, I think one thing that was unique with this is the way we do our proclamations is we always state what's unlawful. We never say what you legally can do. And so for this particular instance, when we opened up the fishery for mobile gears, we had to identify what the legal gears were. So it was unlawful to collect flounder any other way but hook and line and gig. So that hook and line, it really brought attention to that piece because of the way that those proclamations are written.
Right. Thanks, Mike. I'm sorry, you had to talk about flounder.
Want to move on to other things?
Yes, please.
So I'm going to move forward real quick on what the 2022, 2023 schedule is. So at the August meeting, we always present the commission with our plan of what the FMP schedule is going to be for the next 5 years. And then the DEQ secretary has the final approval on that schedule. We put that through, the secretary approved it. And so for 2022, 2023 fiscal year, the review is river herring, hard clam, oyster, estuarine striped bass, spotted sea trout, and striped mullet. Additionally, in 2023, the division plans to update the blue crab stock assessment as laid out in the Amendment 3 adaptive management to that plan. So before I get into each one of those in detail, Laura already went over that river herring. We already, same meeting that we said we're opening it up. We already have that buttoned up in an information update. So that will go likely to 2028 for the next review of that plan. So I'll start with the blue crab stock assessment update. So the stock assessment update is going to include data through 2022. The terminal year of the last assessment was 2026. Or 2026, woo, we're in the future, 2016. And that indicated that the stock was overfished and overfishing was occurring. The update will add 6 years of data, but depending on the type of management from Amendment 3, that's 2 to 3 years of management years. So just wanted to note that for this update that's going to be occurring. And then another item for blue crab that the division has been working on is the list of approved Diamondback Terrapin birds. So in Amendment 3, the Diamondback Terrapin management areas were established, and in those areas you are required to use a Diamondback Terrapin bird in your pot. We have a list of approved pots. As part of that plan, we have the ability, if science says that there is a new design that could be used that has the same efficacy as what is already approved, we can add that. So in 2020, North Carolina crabbers approached us with a idea for a pot modification. We've been partnering with UNCW the last 2 years, doing the scientific research to see if this is a effective bird. So we are currently looking at the results of that research. 1 year of that research was in lab, and then 1 year was with crabbers, both in and not in the management areas. So likely you'll hear about that in early 2023 when we get to know if that's going to be a addition. Or if you don't, at least the shellfish crustacean will, because it is in the plan that the shellfish crustacean group will work with us on that list of devices. So that does it for blue crab. Oyster clam, that plan has just opened up. We just got our internal group together, and we are currently looking at the data and current management. And so late in 2023, we'll start scoping for that plan after we assess what the current management and data availability is for that. So just that's on the horizon further down the road. So next I'll go into our estuarine striped bass and work off of what Laura has already updated you on from what the commission has been doing. You all gave recommendations for Amendment 2 in March. And then the steps that Laura covered occurred with the Marine Fisheries Commission. As she said, we will be discussing it again at their November meeting. In the meantime, we do annual reviews of all of our FMPs, which we publish and we publish in July and bring to the commission in August. Through review of estuarine striped bass, we were concerned with the low juvenile abundance over the last several years. And so the division undertook a stock assessment update for the Albacore Roanoke stock. The division and WRC staff continue to work on that update. Due to an initial review of that stock assessment update, the director decided not to open the fall season for the Albemarle Sound. However, this continues to be assessed, this subject, and continues to be a work that the division and WRC are doing together. And then we have the spotted sea trout stock assessment. We had a peer review panel agree that the assessment is the best available science and is appropriate to base management on. The assessment contains data through 2019, and it has estimated that the stock is not overfished. However, it is experiencing overfishing. A stock assessment overview will be presented to the MFC at its November meeting, and then we will start the FMP process. So in early 2023, we'll go out for scoping like we've just done for mullet. Next, I have mullet, and that's a pretty extensive update compared to these others. So before I move into mullet, are there any questions about what I've reviewed so far?
Explain to me, you said the speckled trout weren't overfished, but was experiencing overfishing.
Yes.
Explain that to me.
Okay, so overfished means that there's not enough females producing enough young in the stock. Overfishing means we're taking too many out that they cannot replace themselves fast enough. So there needs to be, in any fishery, before it becomes overfished, there needs to be years of overfishing where it's not keeping up. Supply and demand is not keeping up. So overfishing is where we're taking too many out that they're not producing enough at that point.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, I'll move on to mullet then. So our mullet stock assessment was presented to the Marine Fisheries Commission at its May business meeting. The peer-reviewed assessment indicated that the stock is overfished and that overfishing is occurring in the terminal year of 2019. Based on the stock concerns, the DEQ secretary has determined it's in the best interest of the stock to develop temporary management through a supplement. The supplement will be in place until Amendment 2 is adopted, and the supplement will be presented to the Marine Fisheries Commission at its November meeting. Supplements are meant to be short-term management, simple short-term management, to do a stopgap until we can have a full plan put into place. That management may or may not end up in that final plan, but the secretary has asked the Marine Fisheries Commission to work with the division on a supplement. Also at our November meeting, or the Marine Fisheries Commission November meeting, we will be asking the commission to approve the goal and objectives for Amendment 2 and to review the public scoping, which was held September 26th through October 7th. A public scoping document was developed by staff to guide the conversation with stakeholders and seek input on management strategies to be developed during the Amendment 2 process. Management strategies are the techniques that we use to achieve the goals of the plan. The proposed management strategies for Amendment 2 include sustainable harvest, recreational fishery management, small mesh gill net management, stop net fishery management, and migration corridors. The division reached out to stakeholders through an online questionnaire and 3 in-person meetings, one of which was held as a hybrid online meeting. This was our first hybrid open forum type meeting with a new audio setup. So kind of like today, we had a little bit of hiccups, but I got a lot of feedback from those who did participate both online and in person. And those are things that we appreciate along the way with these growing pains where we're trying to reach out to all of our stakeholders and give them the opportunities to speak with us in a manner that they're comfortable with or is available to them. So we continue to try to provide this ease of access. And so I appreciate any ideas along the way of ways of improvement. We did have a lot of stakeholders participate during our 2-week scoping. We had over 200 participants through either our online or in-person opportunities. Comments centered around concerns over the assessment results, regional management, gear-specific management, year-round fishing needs, recreational fisheries management, and concerns on overfishing finger mullet, the life stage of the finger mullet, more so than the roe mullet concerns. There was a lot of interest in stakeholders to be members of our Fisheries Management Plan Advisory Committee. So I look forward to people still asking to be on those committees. As you said, sometimes it's like pulling teeth. But during this process, I've had already, I think like 20 people give me their phone number and email and say, contact me when you're ready to set this up. So at any point, if people are interested in those type of things, I'm always willing to write down people's names. The reason for this long part about mullet is that we wanted to also give you all an opportunity if there was some management strategy that you feel needs addressed during this development of Amendment 2, that we can hear from you on that. So feel free to talk mullet.
Any comments relative to strike mullet?
Which way is the division leaning for a management plan for the mullets? Has anybody kind of put together a?
Have not put a pen to paper, not one spec. Now we have the supplement, and that will come to the commission in November. However, for the amendment, we have not started any aspect of management at this time because we wanted to complete this process, which it'll complete with the Marine Fisheries Commission giving their input on scoping, and then we'll dive into putting our heads together and trying to come up with management.
What are they thinking about for the supplement? Because I'm very negative tonight, but in my eyes, every supplement is just a way to fast track a law without due process.
So currently, the director really wanted the supplement to be simple and effective in what it can do for a temporary stopgap. And so it is looking at a season closure towards the end of the year.
For all mullet?
For all mullet.
I have a little idea. even in my negative state of mind, maybe we catch a few mullet in the winter as part of our speckled trout fishery all winter. And we don't catch them every day, but when we do catch them, it's nice to try and tie the ends of a week together in the winter. Maybe a bag limit, if you will, on the mullet, maybe 400 pounds only. Restrict us to 400 pounds from, say, New Year's until Easter or somewhere in there. I don't know if that'll meet their reductions or, but something like that. Maybe that's a little something that can work somewhat toward everybody finding a path forward in this. And even, like I said, maybe I don't agree with everything, but that's possibly something a lot of the commercial guys could live with. There's not a lot of targeting mullet in the winter. There are times they're worth a little bit of money on the food market. And maybe if we do catch them, if and especially if we have a trout freeze and now that fishery is taken away, maybe that little 400-pound mullet limit will get us through.
May I ask a follow-up? What do you define as winter?
Well, maybe New Year's to East, after roe mullet season, kind of end of December, January, maybe January 1st. Of course, roe mullets are a little later the further south you go, but maybe that would have to be kind of hashed out between the south and the north. North is probably going to end faster. In the central area, I think almost every mullet in the river systems has already left this year because of the storm we had a few weeks ago. I'm on the water every day. I've not seen any amount of mullet since that storm, and I hope some will come back after the spawn, which usually they do. They come back. They're skinny. They're awful looking fish, but there are times those awful looking fish has saved my week. So I'd still like that opportunity, and maybe on just a slightly reduced scale. Maybe I'm not seeing that school of mullet say, oh yeah, baby, there's 2,000 pounds right there and circle them up and catch them. But if I blind set some trout and all of a sudden, there was some mullet there, I don't have to just shuck them and throw them overboard. In this day and age, every penny counts.
So, we actually have Dan Zapp here, who's one of our species leads. And I don't know, Dan, do you have any like follow-up questions or anything you'd like to add to the conversation in terms of getting feedback from the group?
Yeah, probably. I'll come up to the table so I don't have to yell from the back of the room. Do it, so.
While he's getting situated, you said season closure close to the end of the year. That's total season closure, recreational, commercial.
Recreational and commercial total closure.
Did they come up with a hard percent reduction? I listened in on the scoping meeting, but I think it was a teacher working and had kids in the house.
So I'll let Dan take over.
Okay.
Yeah, so the options that we're developing for the supplement are just to end the overfishing stock status. So just to end overfishing immediately. So to get to the threshold, which is what we use to determine the overfishing status, it would be about a 10% reduction. To get to the target, we'd be looking at a 20 to 33% reduction in landing. So that's the range of options that we'll be presenting in the supplement.
About how many pounds would 30% be?
How many pounds would it allow for the commercial?
I mean, how much pounds are you looking at to reduce?
So it would be reducing from the 2019 landings, which were pretty low to begin with. So it would leave about 800,000 pounds in that range for the commercial fisheries or for the fisheries.
And that's to end overfishing. What's the bigger number?
That is the big.
Okay, so that's
yeah.
To end the overfishing status.
To end the overfish status is actually a lower number is actually a lower reduction than it is to end the overfishing status. So by doing this now in 1 year, this gets us a jump start on ending the overfish status. Everything that we've looked at in terms of projections for the stock so far tells us that the stock can recover really quickly if there's any reduction in commercial or fishery.
So if you go back and look at your numbers, from say like December to March, this 4 months period, put like a bag limit, like he's talking about, like a 400-pound bag limit to that. You determine
That won't do it. So y'all are familiar with the fishery. The bulk of the fishery occurs in October, November. That accounts for well over 50% of the landings every year. Everything outside of that is minimal landings, like Keith was saying, like you get them once in a while when you're fishing for other things. There might be some people that are specifically looking for mullet, like for bait fishery, meat fishery, whatever it might be.
So the reduction would have to come during the road season.
It would have to, and so I say October, November, but really we're specifically talking October 15th to November 15th. It's incredibly consistent every year. That's when the whole, like basically the whole fishery occurs, is those 30 days in the middle of those 2 months. So if we do a closure at the end of the year, which is what we're kind of focusing on at the moment, that condenses the closure period, puts it down to a shorter period of time. That allows us to leave the rest of the fishery open. So when you get those landings, when you're looking for trout, we're fine with that. If we have that end of the year closure, that allows those fish that are headed out to spawn, that's where we're going to get our bang for the buck, is allowing those fish to spawn during the time when they're heading out. And it allows us to minimize the time period when that closure, yes, it is during a really important time for the fishery, but it allows us to minimize that and not have to worry about discards from other fisheries. It allows the other parts of the fishery to continue.
So what you just said, it's a 30-day season, looking at it from the division side, you need a 30% reduction. So you're talking about closing it from November 5th to November 5th to November 15th. Is that what the division is looking at, a 10-day closure?
No. We'd be looking at like beginning of November. Well, depending on the amount of reduction the options that we develop, we'd be looking at anywhere from the beginning of November through the end of the year to around November, mid-ish November through the end of the year. So we need to get the reductions that we're looking at. We need to carry it on to the end of the year. So through the end of this.
Here's a scenario. Storm a couple of weeks ago that we had low pressure. What we've seen, all of the lower Pamlico, the southern Pamlico Sound, Pamlico and the Neuse River, the Bay River, they all dumped out. They went to the ocean. Okay. There's not going to be hardly any harvest out of that area this year. That's a lot of reduction.
That is a lot of reduction, yeah. And so that's one of the things with season closures is different weather patterns can affect the way the fish move, which is going to affect their ability to be caught. Those fish could still be caught in the ocean. There's some ocean fisheries that could be caught south of Pamlico Sound. But I will also add that we have that variation throughout time, and that period of when the highest mullet landings occurs, it's pretty consistent. So at least for striped mullet, like we feel relatively confident in based on trip ticket landings, and what we see in our samples that fishery is occurring over those couple months.
Yeah, I mean, usually they start buying about the 15th of October, and usually by the end of November, it's pretty much over with the red month season.
Yeah. Have you all noticed any? So we've heard from some people like closer to the beach, down south a little bit, that their mullet fishery and their real mullet fishery in those areas have been somewhat shifting later in the year. And we do see, like, we see roe mullet in our sampling all year. Have y'all seen it?
They, down south of, Swansboro area, they don't really harvest that many mullet down in that area. Because the buyer, there's one main buyer. He's from Louisiana. Named Ratfield. He buys 99% of the mullets that come out of North Carolina during the road season. And he very seldom buys a lot of mullet in Swansboro.
And it's more a shipping issue, because when the whole state is catching, you could fill up an 18-wheeler every couple of days and send it down, send it down, send it down. All of a sudden, the whole, from Swansboro to the north has stopped catching. Well, we can't fill up a truck in a reasonable amount of time anymore. We're not, the profitability is gone. We're not going to buy any more mullet.
So even the buyer's looking for like a quick hit, like.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
They
like,
want
get
that.
it out.
They want that 6 weeks, and after that, they're not buying fish anymore. You could still have great roe, but they can't make it profitable to come up for 10,000 pound. They need 40,000 on a truck to make it work.
And when is the buyer usually coming up here? So I've heard like the buyers have focused more later in the year, recently anyway.
Well, they're starting to buy right now. They started the 15th. I believe the 15th. It might have started a few days earlier up this way.
I heard it started yesterday, but I'm not.
Was it yesterday? Yeah. Anyway, they started. The road right now is between like 10 and 12%. And as the weeks go on, they'll get on up. I mean, by Thanksgiving or by the second week of November, they'll be 18%. That's when you make your money.
Of course, the bigger the roe, the more money per pound they're willing to pay.
So, and usually, like I said, by the end of November, it's done. The buyers go home. I mean, his representatives go home, or his buyers, but the buyers that work for Hatfield, there's not enough fish here left for them. They go home.
Would it be better to do a closure the first couple of weeks of the traditional season and then have more days in November?
Exactly. That's a good option out there, and keep them from catching those cheap fish. Like right now, to the fish house, they're not the 75 cents. They're not gonna pay the fisherman but maybe 30. So the first couple of weeks that's.
Well, being the division hasn't ran any numbers yet, they
that'll
can look into the October closure and leave it open later in November.
So let it start November 1st to
November 31st.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Can I jump in?
Sorry.
So one of the concerns we have with an earlier closure is recoupment. So in order to ensure that we can get the reductions, we tend to prefer to close at the end of a season versus the earlier, because it's a very real potential that even though those fish weren't caught in October, they can be recouped and caught in November. So your catch will go up so that you end up not getting any reduction.
and of course, from our side, we worry that if there's a big low pressure,
they
we're not going to catch any, and they get an entire.
Some of those fish have already left this year.
A lot of them.
And the road mullet fisheries is highly selective on your size of the fish you catch.
Right.
So I think you're still gonna let a lot of those fish go, being the road mullet fishery is so specific on their gear size.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the great, sorry. Go ahead. That's a lot of the great input we've been getting, especially the stakeholders here in Dare. They went over all their gear and stuff and talked about that and how specific their gear is to targeting and how the size of the mullet changes over the, you get the skinny ones that are just long and they call them hot dogs every so often to some of the people. And then
rail.
Right. And then you get the chunkers. Yeah, exactly. And that's what they want.
Yeah.
That's where you're gonna make your money. So this is valuable conversation, and this is why we have scoping, is exactly for these conversations.
Well, and if you have a total closure, you're gonna kill the tackle stores. And because they won't have a source, in their prime.
That they're gonna be buying and freezing mullet harder earlier in the season.
And that's something nobody had brought up yet. So
I mean, that's,
Since we have some.
Well, at this time of year, tackle shops like gold. Absolutely. They go right for them. Yeah.
Jamie has her hand up. Sorry, go ahead. So.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Well, I had a question. This is a side note to the mullet, and with the way we are on flounder right now, if you try to keep your 7 drum when that's open, your only back catches bluefish, flounder, and mullet. If you take the mullet and the flounder off the table for most of the year, are we gonna ever have a replacement fish in there for back catch, like spot or croaker or something that would make sense, to go along with the red drums, so you're not losing that species also?
Yeah, and thanks for that, Jamie. You're not the only one that's brought that up. We did hear that during our scoping meeting down in Wilmington. The rub of that question ends up being that that's something that needs to be addressed in the red drum plan.
Yeah, well, the latitude, the plan has the latitude to, I guess, adapt manage, if you want to call that, that the director can, at their discretion, set those bycatch species. So that is something that could be considered. It's not been something that, at least in recent history, that we've looked at changing. And that's primarily because in recent history, we've had some issues with going over our allowable catch, at least during the last 2 seasons, like the spring seasons, we've had to close red drum. But in these situations where we continue to have to ratchet down, like the flounder season being so short, it's certainly possible. The plan for red drum kind of specifies that red drum is sort of a bycatch fishery that's called incidental to other targeted species. So if we can identify other targeted species that are legitimate, that have red drum bycatch, the idea is that you're trying to reduce the amount of dead red drum discards you have to throw back. So that certainly something we could look into moving forward. And it's been brought up by a lot of people at different meetings recently. So.
I would be really interested. I know, and Dan, correct me if I say anything wrong here. I apologize beforehand. But, we've focused on these season closures as the only, it seems like to us, that's the only really viable option to ensure that we get the reductions. And I'm curious to know your thoughts on like a bag limit or something like you mentioned during that row season. Our sense of it is that that's not really a viable option, but.
It's not really practical.
Well, exactly. And that's, I just wanted to see if that was your opinion as well.
A bag limit.
To limit the amount that you can.
I don't think that is in the mullet fisheries.
Okay.
When you see a school of mullet, you try to circle them.
Exactly, yeah, and that's our.
There might be 400 pounds, and there might be 10,000 pounds.
Yeah.
So if a guy circled up 10,000 pounds, and he had to kill whatever to get that 1,000 pounds, that's a terrible waste.
Yeah, and Dan probably knows that already, but I was curious because I wanted to hear that sort of impression.
And I tell you too, when most of these mullets are caught, they're catching big mullets. All the small ones under 2 pounds escape because they're using either a 4-inch, 4.5, 4.25 inch net. And it lets the pound and under fish, they buzz right on through it.
And is that primarily during the row season or is that all year?
I mean, they don't want to catch nothing but that row mullet. And the percentage of the bucks that they catch, males, it might be 10%.
It's almost entirely females.
Because they're using the right size net to catch the money fish.
So as we start to consider long-term management in this fishery, is there any types of gear limitations like mesh size restrictions or yardage limits or anything that would be something that y'all would consider as options to explore or?
We already work under a yardage limit. And in some fisheries, might get away with less, but not really the mullet fishery. You need that, you're circling them kind of open water. You need that area to kind of pen them up. But maybe a mesh size strictly for the roe mullet season would give some more reduction. You know, let a certain percent of the smaller females go. And I don't know what that size would be, but you guys are constantly at my place measuring and squeezing and looking and, you know, and against what mesh size, it's like a doctor's office there. I would think somebody knows, you know, how many fish would get gone if you only had a 4¼ inch net instead of a 4-inch net, or only had a 4-inch net instead of a 3 3/4. You know, somebody's got them numbers in your organization.
We definitely have that data. That is something we could look at if that's a way, if it's an option that we think is a good way forward.
Yeah, if we can get more days and just harvest those bigger and again, more valuable fish. You know, we can't just look at numbers over the dock. You got to look at numbers in the wallet to make something work for us. You know, as a fish house, it's numbers across the dock, but as a fisherman, it's you know, price per pound. And the bigger, the nicer the fish, the more money per pound you get.
Just like shrimp.
Yeah, yeah.
Small shrimp, no money.
What size are they sexually mature? Because you said you're seeing roadfish all year long in your independent sampling.
So they can mature as early as one.
So what's that? 12-inch fish?
12-inch fish, yeah. But from like they can mature as early as one, but usually what we're seeing is that those 2-year-olds is when they pretty much are mature. And those 2-year-olds is basically the bulk of the fishery. It's everything.
And usually a 1-year-old fish is how big?
There's a lot of overlap in the size at age, but 14 inches less than that. Somewhere. Yeah, somewhere.
So he's not that big.
Yeah, they're a little bit smaller.
A mature fish is a little different than a highly fecund fish.
Absolutely.
As far as the egg production goes, so that's sort of the, you know, that large female can produce exponentially more offspring than that early mature fish can. I mean, you understand that, but that's kind of where you get your bang for your buck as well. Unfortunately, that's the money fish for y'all. It's kind of also the money fish for us in terms of conservation. There's got to be some sort of trade-off.
These road mullets that we catch, it usually takes about 42 to 44 to make 100 pounds. And that's a little over 2 pounds.
So,
but you get out this way now. You get out this way around this ocean. And these guys, I'm pretty sure most of them use a 4 1/4 inch net or 4 1/2 inch net. And they're catching 5, 6 pound fish.
That's something I was wondering too. Does the division need to look at possibly seasonal areas like we do with the flounder because of the migration patterns? I mean, you say this further south, the fish are.
So that is something we heard during the scoping meetings, particularly at this Dare County meeting that we had, is they want some consideration of regional management. Maybe not what's done with flounder, but something along those lines, because of the variability in the timing of when the mullet are available to those to each fishery. One thing that we did hear from scoping is the differences in regions between like how the fishery is used. So out here in Dare County, it seemed like a lot of like it's an all-year fishery. They're supplying the bait market, and then during this time of year, they're supplying the roe market. There's the meat market as well. In the central area where I'm at, the roe fishery is the big driver, and I'd be interested to know what y'all's thoughts about, because being you're all there in the central area, about like the bait fishery and the meat market, and then down south, it was almost entirely meat market. There's not really a roe fishery according to the guys that we talked to, and there's no bait fishery down there. So I'd be definitely interested in your experiences of the fishery and like how in the seasonality of the fishery, which parts of the fishery, you know, the roe fishery is obviously where the those are the money fish. But particularly recently, it seems as though the bait fisheries picked up, especially as the big red drum fishery has become more popular. So I definitely am interested in y'all's thoughts.
The bait fishery is definitely valuable. Definitely valuable. The state as a whole does probably not catch as many bait fish as they do roe fish. But that bait fish is going to help an individual fisherman right along all summer. Because if it's a bad crab year and shrimp are, you need highly specialized, shrimpers are shrimpers. There's not too many guys that, have a shrimp boat in the backyard just in case. So now crabs are bad, you've taken flounder, we've got, a handful of spots, but everybody can't go spot fishing. So they're working on that bait market and fish houses and bait stores. It's good. It's been getting bought up. It's a viable, important use for these mullet. And I sold a lot of spots as bait this year, but the guys want mullet. That rec crowd really burns through a lot of mullet. And most of it comes from us, meaning commercial fishermen. Some of them catch their own, some of them will throw a net on some Hayden or whatnot, but it's so much easier for them to pull down my driveway and buy 20-pound of mullets rather than try and catch their own. Then they can concentrate on going and catching those fish.
What about looking at a maximum size mesh instead of having a season closure? Say you go to like a maximum of 3.5 or 3 3/4 inch mesh, and you let some of those bigger females go through, because those nets won't catch those bigger females, but you can still build bait fisheries and trout fisheries and maybe still catch some of those real mullet and sale as well. It just might be a little smaller class fish. Would that market wise work for you guys? Or they want those for the.
I don't think that would work.
Especially not for the guys on the beach.
Yeah.
I just hate seeing a complete season closure.
So when you all sell mullet as bait, are they looking for any particular size? Will it just get
Smaller the better.
Smaller the better.
Fingers up to our size.
Cob mullets, what they call them, cob mullets. They're called we catch them in the smallest net that the state allows, which is a 2.5 inch stretch. And the sports fishermen love them because they got a little round head. They got these great big fishing poles, and they like to see how far they can chunk it. And that little round head is aerodynamic, and they can throw it. And they can. I'm telling you the truth. They can throw it 200 yards. A big old mullet head like that, they can't chunk it as far. But a mullet head that big, they can sling it.
Any idea on compliance since the recreational limit went in?
So from the Marine Patrol officers that I've talked to, they have never written any tickets for it. We did hear about this, particularly down south, in the Wilmington area, about how, and it's understandable down there, there's a bigger recreational fishery down there, and there's the harvest of mullet. This is where like the concerns about fishing finger mullet came from. That's from those fishermen down south. But in terms of compliance, it hasn't been an issue that we know of. Does it happen? It could, because those mullet are being used as bait, and they're never coming back to the dock. So,
and that's one of the compliance struggles, is that when Marine Patrol rolls up to them, it's what they have on the boat. And that doesn't mean that they didn't throw a cast net, have their catch, and then use some and throw a net out again. So that's something that's a struggle for us to numerically come to, the answer on.
Anything else relative to mullet?
So that was all I have for FMP stuff. I just wanted to thank you all for this conversation, and this is, I hope this gives you a little bit of warm fuzzies that somebody's listening to you. It really was a, intention of ours to start bringing these scopings to the advisory committees again, to get, the expert opinions and stakeholder input. That's what you all sign up for. So anytime y'all want to talk about it, Dan and Jeff Dobbs are our leads for mullet. Or if you have any leads you want to talk to, feel free to contact Laura or myself, or go on our website. And like Thomas said, we're always willing to talk to people.
Thank you, Corinne. We don't have any public comment. So it's back to you, huh?
Yeah, so, well, this is an item to plan for the next meeting. So like I said, we actually, have scheduled a short presentation on stock assessments for January. So I don't know if you have anything you'd like to bring up at that meeting now, or if you have anything later, please, reach out and let me know. So if there's anything that you, can think of right off the bat, this is an opportunity.
Anybody have any suggestions? Well, she said you can contact her later. Anybody on the WebEx? See any hands? Anything else to come before the committee? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion, second.
Yes, Roger?
I know it's Jim.
Oh, it's Jim.
Did you have something, Jim?
I just wanted to let you all know, my term is up at the end of the year and I am not going to be putting in an application to continue. I started on the Inland Advisory Committee 22 years ago. Been doing this a while, and it's time for me to fry some other fish. But I just wanted to let y'all know, how much I've appreciated working with y'all. It's been really satisfying. Y'all, this committee, as Keith said earlier, has just really always been a good one, always put into work, shared ideas, and even when we don't agree on stuff, always trying to come up with the best approach or compromise for the fish and for the fishers. And that has been really great. There's several reasons why it's time for me to kind of pass the baton, but unfortunately, I got to say that some of the issues Keith brought up definitely contribute to it. Back in the day, the commission used to have a representative from each advisory committee come and present their advice at the meeting, and they stopped doing that. And then lately, it seems like they hardly ever ask for our advice anymore. We used to usually had one or two commissioners attend our meetings, and so we felt like they were listening to what we had to say, and it just doesn't seem that way as much anymore. But I would encourage you all to continue to meet, whether they're asking you for advice on something or not, and give them advice whether they ask for it or not. Pass motions, and the staff listens, and I really respect and appreciate the work y'all staff do. And they, just like tonight, you guys had a lot of great ideas for them. But we need to get that word up the line to the commission. And I think that's a great idea to have a live meeting with the commissioners, put a pig in the ground, get a keg of beer, and I think a lot of good could come out of that. They need to know these committees are out here and have some valuable input for them. But anyway, I just wanted to say thanks and let you guys hear it from me.
Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
Miss you being on the committee.
Well, I'll miss you guys too.
Jim, can you hear me?
Yep.
You hear me?
Yes.
Jim, it's Keith.
Yeah, Keith.
You have been one of my favorite person in these committee meetings for years and years.
And we might not always agree on everything, but I've always respected what you had to say.
Well, Keith, I feel the same way about you, and that's definitely been the case. That's just what made it worth coming to those meetings. I appreciate it.
We'll miss you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Should we let Jim make one final motion then? Has Jim finished did you get the second for the adjournment?
I'll second it.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Jim's final action.
Motion carried. Thank y'all very much.
Good night, y'all.
Hey, Jim, we just built oh, okay, he jumped off.
I'm from Williamson, but I'm, work out of Hatters mostly. Okay, got it. And I grew up in High County, so how we get